Look here. Oh.
In the last few years, cameras hidden in caves, jungles, and abandoned human settlements have begun capturing something deeply unsettling. Scolopendra gigantea are acting in ways no one has ever seen before. The world's most venomous centipedes aren't just surviving, they are growing, changing, learning, and adapting.
The tip of each centipede leg is another kind of tool. The centipede uses them as a lasso to keep its prey from escaping. Not even this cricket, with its powerful kick, can loosen the grip.
Every new clip shows a predator reshaping itself into something more dangerous than we imagined. These recordings are not just disturbing, they are quiet warnings delivered in the dark, the new giants. Something dark began creeping out of the Amazon rainforest long before anyone wanted to admit it. The first videos were dismissed as tricks of light and shaky equipment. People said the strange shapes were nothing more than shadows from thick jungle branches that stretched bodies into forms that should not exist. The scientists who reviewed the early footage felt uneasy, but tried to believe the explanations anyway. They said the movement looked distorted because the cameras were old. They said the size looked exaggerated because the lenses bent the outlines of the animals. The scientists tried to calm themselves with any excuse they could find. But the excuses collapsed when more recordings arrived. Clip after clip showed the same truth. Scolopendra gigantea was changing in a way no one expected. The species had always been large and dangerous, yet the new individuals were far bigger than anything measured in past field studies. Some of them crawled through the rainforest floor with bodies nearly twice the thickness recorded 10 years earlier. Their armor no longer looked like the brittle plates described in older research papers. Under infrared light, the plates shined like polished metal. The surface looked layered and heavy. The overlapping sections looked more like built pieces than natural growth. These early videos created panic among field biologists who thought they had seen every dangerous creature the Amazon rainforest could hide. One clear recording showed a giant centipede moving across a fallen log. Each leg hooked into the bark with a grip that looked as strong as a machine claw. A boa struck the centipede from the side. The snake moved with the speed and confidence expected from an apex predator. Field researchers watching the footage expected the centipede to collapse under the impact. They thought the exoskeleton would crunch the same way it had in past encounters with snakes. Instead, the snake recoiled and showed signs of pain. The centipede did not react at all. Its armor absorbed the hit as if reinforced. The creature turned with fast, cold accuracy and lunged. The snake escaped. The recording ended with a view of the centipede sitting still on the log like a carved monument from another age. When researchers began examining live individuals in the field, they found traits that no camera distortion could explain away. The enlarged centipedes moved into terrain that older generations avoided. They climbed slick walls of rock without slipping. They crossed thin branches hanging over deep ravines. They traveled across unstable ground while showing no fear of falling. It looked as if they had gained a new sense of balance. Some field teams reported movements that suggested the creatures were not only stronger, but also more confident. It was as if they understood that nothing in their environment could hold them back anymore. Physical examinations of collected specimens uncovered even more unsettling discoveries. Many had thick ridges on their armor. These ridges looked like healed scars. Every healed area felt harder than the rest of the exoskeleton. It looked as if each injury had turned into a permanent shield. The pattern suggested that the centipedes were growing stronger after every conflict. Researchers also reported behavior that felt deliberate. Some centipedes pressed their bodies against rocks, fallen trees, and even abandoned metal structures. They applied steady pressure as if testing how much force they could produce. The field teams had never seen this species behave in such a controlled and intentional way. One fact became impossible to ignore. Scolopendra gigantea was becoming harder to crush, harder to stop, and harder to kill. Their bodies were not only heavier and stronger, their behavior was changing in a way that suggested learning and strategy. And as these giants gained strength, The way they used their new bodies during hunts grew far more frightening. Researchers expected the next findings to show simple reactions to new abilities. Instead, the evidence suggested something else. The creatures were not acting by instinct alone, they were showing intention. The gigantea's calculated hunts caught on camera. Old stories once described Scolopendra gigantea as frantic killers. People believed they were nothing more than fast, wild creatures that struck anything that moved. The older accounts said their attacks came from panic instead of thought. These descriptions stayed in field reports and guidebooks for many years because they seemed simple and harmless to believe. But those ideas began to collapse when modern observations revealed something darker. Researchers realized that these animals were no longer acting like unstable predators. They were acting like hunters that made decisions. The world's most venomous centipedes were not just reacting to movement, they were choosing what to do next. During a long research mission in a remote canopy system, scientists watched a young iguana run across thin branches. The animal showed clear panic as it tried to escape a pursuing Scolopendra gigantea. The creature behind it did not rush in the way the old stories claimed. It moved with slow, steady control. It watched the iguana reach the narrowest part of the branch where escape was impossible. The giant centipede struck with one clean attack. The iguana went limp before its body even fell through the leaves. The researchers watching could not deny what they saw. The strike looked planned, measured, and confident. Another discovery came from a study on rodent nests. A mother rat returned to her nest and found only one pup missing. The rest of the litter remained untouched. Tracks around the nest confirmed that one of the world's most venomous centipedes had entered the burrow. It had taken one pup and then slipped away without disturbing anything else. The researchers understood that this was not a random act. It was not simple hunger. It was a selection. The creature had chosen a single target and ignored the others. This behavior pointed to a level of judgment that older field notes had never mentioned. More evidence arrived from many field stations and predation surveys. Researchers found repeated signs of choices rather than frantic attacks. They observed moments where Scolopendra gigantea pursued one target but abandoned another. They saw situations where the creature retreated instead of fighting. They watched it strike only when the conditions gave it the highest chance of success. These patterns showed a predator that seemed to weigh its own energy, the risk of taking a specific prey and the value of the outcome. The world's most venomous centipedes were acting with an intelligence that felt dangerously close to strategy. During a nighttime survey near a rainforest settlement, researchers watched one of these giants hide under a porch. It stayed still for hours. It faced a chicken pen the entire time and did not move until a chick wandered far from the flock. The strike happened without noise. The attack looked so clean that the researchers compared it to a controlled procedure rather than a wild grab. The speed, the silence, and the precision left them deeply unsettled. They realized they were not watching instinct. They were watching a calculated action. Nothing in these patterns suggested randomness. Every detail pointed toward learning. Scolopendra gigantea was studying the habits of the animals around it. It was mastering the rhythms of the rainforest. The world's most venomous centipedes were becoming predators that understood their surroundings better than any earlier generation. What terrified the researchers most did not come from the hunt itself. It came from what happened after the kill. The venom did not behave the way it once did. It did more than subdue the prey. It altered the body in ways that had never been recorded. New field necropsies revealed that the venom had changed. It was no longer the same substance this species carried for centuries. Something within these creatures had evolved into a form far more frightening than anyone expected. The venom that changes the rules. People once believed that the bite of Scolopendra gigantea was painful but rarely deadly. Old reports described a feeling like hot metal pressed into the skin. People said the agony lasted for hours, but that recovery came with rest and time. Those beliefs were passed down because the older venom rarely killed larger animals. But they now stand as dangerous misunderstandings. Modern biological studies show that the venom carried by the world's most venomous centipedes has changed into something far more destructive. It no longer stops at immobilizing prey. It destroys whatever it enters. In controlled field observations, researchers watched frogs react to a single puncture. The animals shook in violent spasms before their bodies went limp almost instantly. Rats reacted with severe cardiac distress. Their heart rate surged so fast that the monitors recorded a sharp climb followed by a sudden drop into complete silence. Small birds, which used to suffer temporary weakness, now collapsed out of the air without warning. Their wings folded in a way that looked unnatural, as if their muscles lost all function at once. Every test showed the same pattern. The venom created a rapid breakdown so severe that the animals failed before they understood what had struck them. The effect on tissue created even more alarm. The areas touched by the venom softened with frightening speed. The color of the flesh changed to a dark tone that spread outward as the cells collapsed. The prey did not simply die, it began to unravel in a way that looked like controlled decay. The researchers who recorded these details described the process as immediate and unstoppable. They realized the venom was acting with a level of force never associated with this species before. The most chilling evidence came from a remote settlement deep inside the rainforest. A man clearing debris from a storage shed was bitten by Scolopendra gigantea. Witnesses reported that he remained conscious for only a few minutes. His breathing became uneven. His arms and legs locked in rigid positions. He collapsed long before any medical help could reach him. The autopsy revealed that the venom had moved through his system with startling speed. It disrupted his organs in a way that left no hope for recovery. The incident forced researchers to confront the reality that the world's most venomous centipedes were no longer just a threat to small animals. They had become lethal to humans in a matter of minutes. Researchers studying venom use soon uncovered something even more disturbing. They noticed that Scolopendra gigantea no longer delivered wasteful, chaotic bites. The species now used its venom with careful precision. The strikes were shorter, the doses were smaller, the placement was exact. Each attack looked as if the creature was conserving its supply so it could kill again without delay. This behavior suggested a level of control that felt deeply unnatural. The idea that the venom was becoming stronger was already frightening. The idea that the creature understood how to use it more efficiently made the situation worse. This venom had become more than a natural toxin. It had become an upgrade that changed the entire balance of the rainforest. And as the venom grew more devastating, researchers soon discovered something even more chilling. They uncovered the reason this nightmare continued to grow with such alarming success. Scolopendra gigantea had begun protecting their future generations with a level of ferocity that no one had ever witnessed before. The expanding territory. Reports arrived in small pieces at first. Field teams working in the high mountains claimed they saw a massive Scolopendra gigantea climbing through cloud forests, where nighttime temperatures should have stopped it from moving at all. Another team watched the world's most venomous centipedes glide through a river. The creature slipped under roots and debris with a smooth motion that looked more like a ribbon of muscle than a land animal. Engineers inspecting abandoned buildings found enormous individuals twisting through old drainage systems. These structures were cold, damp, and filled with metal, yet the creatures moved through them with ease. The most unsettling reports came from suburban neighborhoods. Homeowners described huge centipedes crossing driveways at night with slow, confident movements. Many said the animals looked like relics from a world older and harsher than the one humans knew. It became clear that these creatures were not wandering. They were occupying. They were claiming new territory with deliberate intent. Scolopendra gigantea now flourished in high-elevation forests that once seemed impossible for its survival. They moved through riverbeds as if they had adapted to water long ago. They traveled beneath metal panels, inside pipes, and along the edges of farmland without hesitation. Human environments, which once forced wildlife away, became new hunting grounds for the world's most venomous centipedes. They adapted faster than researchers could predict. Their diet changed in the same effortless way. Mountain mice replaced jungle rats. Cold, hardy amphibians replaced tropical frogs. Whatever lived in the new terrain quickly became prey. The species showed no struggle in learning which animals offered the most energy or the safest hunt. Every environment turned into a resource. The reach of Scolopendra gigantea expanded with a level of efficiency that alarmed every expert involved in the studies. However, the most unsettling discoveries did not come from the places these creatures traveled. They came from what the species did once it arrived. New field observations revealed maternal behavior far beyond anything previously recorded for this species. Researchers watched mothers guard their egg clusters with intense focus. They threw themselves at intruders with a rage that looked almost reckless. They refused to abandon their clutches even when fires spread across the forest floor or when floodwaters forced larger animals to flee. These scenes showed a predator establishing secure breeding grounds. The researchers began to understand that every new territory was not just a feeding site. It was a fortress designed to raise a stronger generation. Even this fierce maternal drive did not compare to what researchers witnessed next. They discovered that Scolopendra gigantea became its most terrifying self during the short period when the species should have been at its weakest. This vulnerable moment occurred during its molt. Ferocity passed to the next generation. In the dark hollows of remote forests, researchers used thermal imaging to monitor activity inside hidden nests. What they saw looked almost ritualistic. A mother Scolopendra gigantea wrapped her entire body around her clutch of eggs in a tight defensive coil. The creature that once moved with fluid speed became a rigid wall of armor. Under the thermal cameras, her body glowed with slow, steady heat, which showed how firmly she held her position. Predators that usually attacked anything soft or unprotected refused to go near her. They seemed to recognize that the world's most venomous centipedes were not easy prey. When a small reptile wandered too close, the mother reacted with explosive force. The attack came so suddenly that the reptile screamed and fled. The researchers saw no hesitation in the mother's strike. She returned to her coil immediately after defending her nest. She cleaned the eggs with constant, careful movements. Each leg lifted and rotated them with precise attention. Her behavior showed focus so intense that she looked more like a sentinel than a simple invertebrate. When the eggs hatched, the mother wrapped herself around the hatchlings in another tight circle. She shielded their small bodies until their legs gained strength. She protected them until their instincts sharpened enough to respond to danger. Researchers documented this same pattern inside caves, under rotting logs, and inside abandoned human structures. The mothers remained with their offspring. They did not hunt. They did not retreat. They did nothing except guard their young. This change in behavior had powerful consequences. The survival rate of the hatchlings increased with each new generation. More of the young reached adulthood. The number of the world's most venomous centipedes growing to full size rose quickly. This created larger populations, spreading into new territories with greater ease. Researchers noticed something else that was even more troubling. The young appeared to learn from their mothers. In one observation, a juvenile watched as its mother struck a large intruder with overwhelming force. Immediately afterward, the young creature copied her posture. It lifted its body in the same threatening way, as if it had imprinted the behavior during its earliest moments of life. This suggested that ferocity was being taught rather than simply inherited. Even these disturbing discoveries did not represent the deepest horror linked to Scolopendra gigantea. Researchers learned that the most terrifying moment in the life of the world's most venomous centipedes did not occur during the hunt. It occurred during the molt. A molt should be a moment of weakness. A shedding creature should be soft and exposed. It should be easy for predators to kill. Yet every piece of evidence showed something impossible. Scolopendra gigantea did not weaken during its molt. Instead, the molt became a form of metamorphosis. The molt of the monster. The researchers who documented the molting process believed they would witness a moment of weakness. They expected a creature that could barely move. Instead, they watched something that felt designed by fear itself. Scolopendra gigantea became swollen and pale as the old shell began to open. Its body shook with violent convulsions. The cracked armor split along the back and peeled away. Wet legs slid outward like new limbs learning to move for the first time. The new armor beneath the old skin had a shine that looked unnatural. It glistened, as if it had been shaped inside a nightmare rather than grown in the dark. A molting chamber should be a place where a creature hides from danger. But the world's most venomous centipedes refused to follow that rule. Instead, Scolopendra gigantea selected locations that offered multiple escape paths. These places included tight cracks in stone, webs of hanging roots, and narrow seams along jagged walls. Each location allowed the creature to move freely while limiting the movement of anything that tried to reach it. Researchers realized that the species was choosing defensive positions with careful planning. The centipedes were not hiding. They were preparing. Then the creature performed the most chilling act of the molt. It devoured the shed skin with shocking urgency. It consumed every piece of the old shell as if nothing could go to waste. The researchers explained that this act allowed the centipede to recover minerals and strength stored inside the discarded armor. Within a few hours, the new exoskeleton hardened. The hardening did not happen slowly. It happened in a sudden, almost violent shift, as if stone were setting under intense heat. What followed became the most alarming part of the entire transformation. Freshly molted Scolopendra gigantea moved faster than before. They twisted their bodies with greater flexibility. Their movements became more aggressive and unpredictable. Some juveniles began hunting almost immediately after the new armor solidified. They slipped through narrow openings they had not been able to enter before. They struck with a speed that caused experienced handlers to misjudge the attacks. One freshly molted centipede was observed catching a bat in mid-flight. Researchers had once believed this act to be physically impossible for the species. Another individual climbed a near-vertical stone wall while its body was still soft. Its movements rippled in ways that looked almost unnatural. Within seconds, it vanished into the canopy above. These events convinced researchers that the world's most venomous centipedes were gaining new abilities with every molt. It became clear that Scolopendra gigantea transformed into something far more dangerous during the hours after shedding. It became reckless. It became ravenous. It became fearless. These changes happened so quickly that researchers could not track them in real time. The species was evolving faster than the tools used to study it. Each new molt brought new traits. Each new layer of armor created new strength. Each change produced new instincts that made the species even more lethal. As the evidence continued to grow, researchers could no longer deny a harsh truth. Scolopendra gigantea was not reaching a final form. It was moving toward something greater. So it was climbing toward its peak. It was rising through each molt and shaping itself into the perfect predator. And what it becomes next might be something the world is not prepared to face in the dark.